Hello and welcome to the Succeeding in the Age of AI with Odoo Enterprise talk. So, what am I going to talk about today? First, I'm going to tell you why you should care about this topic. Second, we're going to have a deeper look into the potential of AI. And then we're going to look into the technologies that make this possible. And in the end, so you get a feeling of how this really looks in reality, I'm going to show you a quick use case. And we'll wrap up the talk with some additional information in the end. If you have any questions, please feel free to gather them and ask in the end. I heard there's a microphone going around, so you can ask any question you want towards the end. So who am I? I'm Simon Stappen. I'm managing partner at Much Consulting. We are an Odoo Gold partner from Munich, Germany. And we focus on a more consulting-driven approach, so the majority of our 70 people are actually consultants. And we focus on automating the processes for our customers. So naturally, when AI became more and more applicable, we got really excited, and that's why we're doing this talk today. Overall, we have implemented well over 100 systems in multiple countries. So we're working all over Western Europe and the US. And I'm happy to have you here all today. Before I start, the slides and also the list I'm going to refer to later on is available online. If you want to get it by mail, you can just fill out this form. We're not going to spam you. We're just going to send you the list and a bit of extra information. And you're also going to have the QR code at the end and also at the door when you leave. So let's go. Why should you care about automation and AI right now? So originally, the consensus was that it will take decades until AI and automation driven by AI will actually come into the workplace. There was a very large study done by McKinsey. It's probably the largest study on the topic done with actual businesses in 2017. And they developed two scenarios, how fast AI and automation is going to replace activities in the workplace. And the original estimate was that most likely around 2050, 50% of all the activities in the workplace, they're going to be automated, especially with AI. And as you have seen, the developments in the last years were probably a bit faster than they expected. So actually, the updated estimate from this year puts the 50% mark 10 years earlier. So it's expected that AI and automation will actually take hold a lot faster than anyone originally anticipated. And if you look at the early scenario the new one compared to the old, it's also a lot steeper. So basically everything indicates that already until 2030, a significant amount of activities in all developed countries will be supported by AI or done by AI. And the reason for this is very easy. Using automation and AI, we can enable our workforce to generate more output. For all the different industries and all the different functions in a company, there's a lot of different studies, and they're all different, but they all kind of show the same picture. So this here is from BCG, and what it basically shows is the entire potential from all the current known AI use cases is between 20 and 45%, depending on the function and the industry you operate in. And additionally, this year there were already a lot of studies done how much AI actually raises productivity today. So there was a study done over roughly 800 larger AI implementations, mostly in mid-sized and bigger companies, and on average, efficiency went up by over 10%. Which is then both split in cost savings and obviously also in higher revenue. And 90% of all AI investments from this study that were done in the last 12 years were profitable, and actually 6% more were plus minus zero. So it's a pretty big no-brainer as a company to invest in AI. So starting from this data, I would say integrating AI into processes will be the core of every ERP in the next years. And so I think also Odoo and all Odoo partners should familiarize themselves with the topic, and I'm going to try to help you with that today. Before we dive deep into AI, I want to quickly talk about automation a bit more general. So as you know, automation really describes anything that reduces human interaction to create any kind of output. And AI is basically a part of automation, but there's a lot of other ways to automate. And for example, in Odoo, you have the automated actions, you have the product settings that influence a lot of other processes in the system, you have the purchasing scheduler, creating your purchase order and your manufacturing orders, you have the routes, and for example, also the default values, which are all great examples of small and easy ways to automate without using AI. And in general, the easiest way to automate is not using AI. So whenever you have a problem, check first if you can automate it in a standard way without deploying AI, because that's always going to be the best option, as long as your problem is quite simple. If you're coming to more difficult problems, and we look at AI, then this is really all the things where the computer thinks without having a human think about it beforehand. So if we don't need human intelligence in the first place, like when we do a configuration or when somebody clicks the actual button at the right time, then we talk about AI. And good examples, or the main areas in my opinion here, are planning and decision making, generative AI and translators and all this natural language processing that you got so familiar with in the last months, pattern recognition and vision. And actually, most of these topics you can already find in a more complex or simpler ways inside of Odoo. So for example, on the planning and decision-making side, you probably all know the scoring in the Odoo opportunities, where Odoo automatically calculates a score for each opportunity, how likely it is, how it will close. I know it's a simple regression, but this is basically the simplest form of AI in this area. And now with Odoo 17, we got the ChatGPT integration, which I think will be very helpful to bring generative AI closer into Odoo. And from the area of vision, we have the Odoo OCR that reads your invoices and your CVs, and assumingly more documents in the future. So today, for this talk, process AI is all kind of automation that goes beyond what we originally configured in our ERP. I give you this definition because I think it's a little bit easier than talking about these very abstract terms. And we use this actually with a lot of our clients to differentiate what is not AI and what is AI, because as you know, a lot of people ask for automation, ask for AI, but they mean automation, and I think it's really important to first make sure we're using the right tool for the job. Okay, so let's have a quick look into those technologies I've mentioned before and how they can help us to automate some of our processes. First, there's one really important note. If you look at generative AI and what areas it can really create value in, what you will see on the top right corner, so this is the highest value creation, is actually generative AI is great for everything that creates text or images. So for example, creating code and developing, here described as software engineering, is a really big area. So all Odoo partners are going to profit in the future from coding a lot faster. It's estimated it's about 40 to 50% faster to develop in Python if you use, for example, GitHub's Copilot. I think that's already a good finding for most partners here. But the second thing we see, and that's not so great, is that a lot of the ERP things, supply chain, manufacturing, finance, the impact of generative AI, so this one method of AI, is below 10%, and especially for supply chain or manufacturing, it's even lower, because this technology is not very precise, and as you know, manufacturing and finance is about very precise planning. So what we're going to need is we're going to need some other technologies that are going to help us beyond generative AI to work in the ERP. And for this, we're going to have a quick look at the different technologies. As you know, we have already talked about generative AI here. The maturity I would describe as medium right now. There's a lot of things still developing. As you have used the tools in the last months, they got better and better with every iteration. So I would expect a lot of improvements there, and actually a lot more use cases and a lot better output. On vision and OCR, for us in an ERP environment, there's only a few areas that are really relevant. This is the big topic, for example, to make self-driving cars happen, but for us that's not really important. What we really need is reading documents with a very high precision. And this is actually a very mature technology, so 99.9% or even better precision is very easily reachable, is basically a commodity today. So use cases like extracting data from documents, vendor bills, delivery notes, this is really easy and very widely applied. There's a lot of other things that maybe will come later that big corporates are doing today, but maybe in mid-sized companies it's not that popular, but it will come up. For example, a lot of bigger companies make pictures of all their output products and of the different steps, and they have an AI that looks at the picture, finds out if the product was put together correctly automatically without a human looking at it. And I think that would also be a great add-on for the for Odoo quality one day, right? If you just upload the pictures and the computer tells you if it's right or not. Yeah, so there's going to be a lot of these side topics, but I think the main part of Vision and OCR is going to be the document extraction. And then there's two other areas that are really critical for us. The first is pattern recognition. It helps us with so many different activities, and especially because humans are very bad at recognizing patterns, this is very helpful. So we can identify wrong data, for example, misconfigured products before they break our entire system, wrong bookings in accounting. There's a lot of companies working on this to identify those. It's actually quite straightforward, so you would have a small assistant that will tell you, hey, here and here, something looks off, have a look at that. And then there's so many other use cases, automated payment reconciliation without training. It is, depending on the amount, but it's nearly possible to even map payments where you don't know any information about the payment and you don't know the IBAN, based on all the other information in the system, and AI can still often map these payments where you have no information. That obviously then saves a lot of time in accounting. And the beginning of pattern recognition, which is fraud detection, I think this is also a great topic for our ERP. There's a lot more like social engineering attacks on companies than any other type of security threat. And to identify customers or suppliers that are fraudulent, for example, will also be really helpful. And also if you think about big multinational companies, they also want to make sure that all their subsidiaries are doing a good job. And last but not least, we have the topic of optimization and prediction. This can be very easy, from like linear regressions to very complicated. And the maturity overall, I would say, is quite high. This has been stuff already happening in the 70s, 80s, 90s. But there's a lot of new algorithms coming up, and the application of the right algorithm to the right problem is getting a lot better. So the outputs are also getting a lot better, and we don't need to configure, our statistics anymore. They will configure themselves, basically. And with this, it allows us to do inventory and purchasing forecasts significantly beyond what we have in the system. So, for example, weather data, general market data, transport times, actual transport times. All these data sources can be included, and there's a couple of tools out there for this as well, actually. We talked about lead scoring already. I think that's pretty clear. On the cash flow forecast, if you look at everything the company does, how many calls do my salespeople do, how many offers did we send out, you can actually do a lot better cash flow and financial forecasts than you can do today just looking at obligations and orders. So I think this will actually be a really interesting area as well. And then just also the bread and butter activities like optimizing your manufacturing flows, having a better forecast on what you need in the future, producing the right batch amounts in the right order. I think there's basically endless cases for this in the ERP. Since ERP creates efficiency, optimization helps us a lot to deliver on that promise. Okay, so what will be the impact then if we look at all these technologies together? And we are expecting like quite some maturity, so maybe think 5 to 10 to 15 years in the future, this should be possible. First of all, if we look at sales, I know the number look awfully low, but the reason is that AI is not the main problem solver here. Sales gets a lot more efficient because we use e-commerce, online ordering, EDI, instead of having a lot of one-to-one human transactions. And actually the main part of sales that will be left over is complex B2B things, and these are very difficult actually to automate due to their complexity. Nevertheless, we expect that about 35% of the working time here will be saved. This comes from all different angles like data entry, forecasting, email and communication, and then the actual operational part of sales like the order processing, all these like inside sales functions. I think they will be very efficient here as well. On the purchasing side, the improvements are going to be a bit higher because purchasing is often still a lot more manual, right? These are the people that then go in the online shop and buy the things. Very well automated on the sales side, not so well on the purchasing side yet. Here, especially with all the supplier communication, this is going to be a strong impact. And we actually found a lot of companies that offer like purchase agents that renegotiate prices with suppliers, for example, and the same exists on the sales side, that basically if the supplier comes back and asks for a discount, an AI will already take care of this. So we're going to see purchasing and sales AI negotiating discounts with each other. I think that's going to be some fun as well. On the purchasing side, besides, We obviously have the inventory management, the strategic planning that has a big impact on our purchasing performance, and then all the office activities like purchase orders and purchase order approvals. On all those lists here, these are just the biggest points. There's lists in all these studies that have like 50, 60 individual activities, so we summarize them here a little bit. And there's a lot more, so the numbers will not add up if you do the math. On finance, the improvements are going to be the biggest. Long term, it's definitely expected that there's going to be an AI that will look at your business and completely does the bookings automatically without any human interaction. Until we get there, we're going to have very strong improvements on all the things that are still a bit manual. I think OCR, all these savings, they're already factored in, right? So this already is applied very broadly. Digital invoices obviously are going to have an impact as well, as we saw also in the Odoo presentation today. But especially then the more manual and more strategic operations, they will be impacted. Payment processes, accounts payable, running after people getting your money. This will probably always be a thing that we will have to do. Doing your budgeting, your reporting, your analysis. Obviously, you need to understand how your finances work to make your company run. And then all the compliance and auditing functions. I think this is going to be really interesting. And there's multiple companies right now actually working on like an internal auditor that will audit your entire accounting in real time. So when your real auditor comes, he has a lot easier job, and he's probably not going to find much. And I think these kind of things are also going to improve the quality of finance and accounting. So that's also going to be great. Okay, so let's look at a real use case in the end. For our example, we have a very easy question. The question is, what vendor bill should we pay? But the problem in itself is maybe a little bit more difficult than on the average small company. This is an example from one of our larger mid-sized accounts. Unfortunately, we can't name them. They want to keep secret what good stuff they're doing. But the problem in numbers was quite easy. To know what vendor bill line we want to pay, we need to understand, are the quantities, the ordered and the delivered quantities correct, and is the price correct? And for this, we need to connect our vendor bill lines to all our other data in the ERP, but we have a lot of data and it's not very pretty. In this case, we had about 10,000 or more open purchase order lines. These are often multiple open lines per product, right? They're having a lot less SKUs as they have lines, with different vendors as they buy from a lot of different wholesalers, and with different prices because the prices are usually updated daily with their suppliers. On the delivered quantity side, so on looking at our transfers, we had 100,000 goods received in 1 month, roughly. They were including under deliveries, over deliveries. They had mixed purchase orders. So, you know, the supplier just put on the pallet what was laying around, what was available, and mixed all the POs together. And then on the invoice lines, usually about every goods receipt line created roughly one vendor bill line, even though the relationship was not often one-to-one. And they came as huge multi-page documents, often getting one invoice per week that then has over 100 pages. And some even came on paper, which is even better. So in the end, same as on the receipts, we had also mixed purchase orders in one invoice. As you can imagine, that's a pretty big mess, and even though Odoo generally supports this process, doing this by hand will take a small army of people working full-time, doing nothing else, and they really need to have a good mind because you really need to remember all the connections, otherwise you're going to search very long. The small added challenge we had is that this is an industry with no standard product numbers, so we had an internal product number, we had a manufacturer product number, and we had different vendor product number for basically all our vendors. So that added some extra fun because then you have a lot of numbers that are duplicate. One vendor has the number one, another vendor has the number one, but it's two different products. So this added some extra complexity for some additional fun here. And the way we broke this down is, the first thing is we needed something that can extract all invoice information in a very high reliability because this is the base for our automation. So unfortunately, Odoo OCR was not good enough on the quality, and it had big issues with these huge, large documents that are more than 10 pages. So we couldn't rely on that, unfortunate. Then on the second step, we actually need to connect all this data, which, as you can imagine, with our additional challenge here of the different numbers and the different configurations, it's actually quite challenging. So in the step 3, we needed to allow for a reasonable amount of fuzziness, so we don't have too much manual interaction. If 50% of the cases would throw a manual interaction, that wouldn't be a good automation, would it? But at the same time, we also don't want to pay our suppliers too much because they have consistently trying to overcharge us. So we really need to make sure that we get a human interaction when it's needed, maybe if it's a big ticket item or the deviation is big enough. But we really want to avoid having to look at 50,000 orders out of the 50,000 lines of the 100 manually. So we needed to allow for this fuzziness. And the way this works in the end is basically you need a tool that has great vision and OCR to extract all this information in a very high quality. You need great pattern recognition. There's actually a multitude of algorithms that are applied to the problem to map all of this together and allow for the fuzziness and optimize the result, which then happens in our step 3. So in the end, basically the pattern recognition fights against the optimizer and they try to find the optimal solution. So we do this multiple times to find an outcome that is as optimal as possible while not creating too many outliers that we have to check manually. And here, there's one really big learning. We looked at this, we analyzed everything, we understood what would need to happen, we even had a good understanding of all the algorithms, but in the end, as always, do not reinvent the wheel. Deploying and integrating these types of products and processes in a mid-sized or small company will never create an ROI if you try to build the base technology yourself. In my opinion, already using different APIs from different cloud providers that can kind of do these things and just understanding them, integrating them together and fine-tuning them will take significantly too much time. The ROI is going to be not as good as it could be. So in this case, after looking into it and understanding all the different parts, we looked out and we tried to talk with as many AI startups as we could find that have a solution in that direction, try to understand how they do it, so we can evaluate if they actually apply a solution that could work for our use case. And in the end, we settled on BLP, which is a Swiss company. I'm just mentioning them here so you have an example. And they actually do most of these steps and all the things that they couldn't do, we were then able to do with like very simple automation in Odoo. So we didn't have to bring extra AI into the system. And if you take anything away from this talk is, I don't think it's feasible to build larger automations like this yourself, so really look out for the partners around. And this is what we did. We actually collaborated with some researchers from the University of Augsburg in Germany to come up with a list with as many use cases as possible. And for each of the lists, we looked from a consulting side on how relevant is this, how big is the business problem behind it. Obviously, we used a lot of third-party studies as well as an indicator. They helped us understand how the technical difficulty is and basically evaluate how likely it is that an AI right now will create a reasonably good outcome. And then basically, we can very easily group them and find a lot of different providers for a lot of different small issues. Obviously, there's about 5 AI startups being founded every day. So this list is by no means complete, but we try to get a good idea when we have, because we have a lot of these problems every week with our clients, which is the tool that we can integrate with Odoo so we can solve the issues that our clients have without having to reinvent the wheel from the beginning. Over time, my hope would be that Odoo will bring more and more different features like this into Odoo itself. But until then, I think we will have to rely on a lot of third-party vendors. And I think that's also a good thing because Odoo is open and it's flexible, so we can integrate all of this quite easily into Odoo. Okay, thank you so much for your attention. If you have any questions, please feel free to ask. All right. If you don't have any questions, you can also just hit us up. I'm going to be right outside here at the door. And you can just visit us at our booth as well. We're just next to the entrance. You can't miss us. So if you're curious, come by later, ask a question in the hallway. We're very happy to discuss this topic also with all Odoo partners that are doing similar things. I think it's definitely worth collaborating on this. Thank you so much for your time and enjoy the weekend.
We actually have a question on YouTube here. So where am I likely to benefit from AI in the future as a Much consulting customer?
Could you repeat this one more time?
So where am I likely to benefit from AI in the future as a Much consulting customer?
I mean, first of all, our customers profit from the experience we have made with all our other customers. But I think it's a bad idea to look at the problem from the AI side. I think it's more relevant to look at your business and see where you have the biggest lever where you can solve the biggest problems, and then see if AI is even the right tool. I think for a lot of automation problems, AI is probably not the right tool right now. Yeah, and then if AI is the right tool, we can help you figure out what you need. We can integrate that, obviously, into the platform, as in this example. And yeah, I think this is how they can profit from our experience here.
Okay, great, thank you. And then lastly, in which area do you want to set yourself apart from the competition?
I mean, as I said in the beginning, we are really consulting driven. So we try to use as much Odoo standard as possible. We also have about 20 engineers, but we're really trying to come from a value perspective to understand what the clients really need and what creates value for them. And yeah, I think this is what sets us apart in the end, because then we find problems like this that are 6 figures that you can save, and then we can solve them. And I think this is what sets us apart.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Please. I think there's also an iPad at the door with the QR code, so you can also scan it. I'm not sure how good the quality is on the screen here, if it scans easy. Yeah. So I think before I would start doing this, I would probably make sure that all my documents, they're actually indexed. It's quite similar to what Fabian actually presented, that now when they extract the text, right, they make it available in the search. I think this would be the step 1, to actually make all your documents content available in search so you can find things easily, which brings you to your goal when you want to discover knowledge very quickly. Right now, there's not a lot of generative AI or neural language processing modules that actually can ingest your own data easily. All these HubSpot integrations and all these reportings integrations, they are very simple and they don't help you really to discover knowledge today. But one thing that basically all business generative AI companies are working on right now, I've not seen anyone that can do it today, but I would see again in 6 months, there will probably be somebody around that would then be able to ingest your information, right? All your files, maybe even all your tickets, your knowledge base, all the data you have, and can actually answer questions in the context of your own private information. But right now, there's a few starts, but there's not a lot available actually that does that. But to be honest, as soon as this is available, I would expect that every document management system would both extract all information from all files and also makes it available in kind of like a ChatGPT chat-style manner where you can ask questions and get answers based on your own data. Thank you so much.